Imagine sitting at your desk, staring at a project so big that it feels like a mountain pressing down on your chest. Maybe it's a report you've been postponing for weeks, a book you've always dreamed of writing, or even something as simple as reorganizing your workspace that has turned into a silent weight in the back of your mind. You tell yourself you'll get to it tomorrow, then tomorrow again, and suddenly weeks have gone by. The guilt grows heavier, the resistance stronger, and the project only looms larger in your imagination. We've all been there, paralyzed by the sheer size of a task, caught in the psychological trap of all or nothing. The mind sees the finish line so far away that it decides not to take even the first step. But what if the way out wasn't about building willpower, finding motivation, or forcing yourself to tackle the whole mountain at once? What if it all started with something so absurdly small that your brain couldn't find a reason to resist? Today, I want to share with you a mental trick that researchers and high performers use to dismantle procrastination and unlock momentum. I call it the one-sentence method. And once you understand how it works, you'll realize that any overwhelming project, no matter how big, can be cracked open by writing just a single sentence. Let's start by addressing the core of procrastination. Procrastination is not laziness. It's a stress response. Neuroscience shows that when the brain perceives a task as too big, too undefined, or too emotionally loaded, the amygdala, the fear center, lights up. Your body interprets the task as a threat, even though it's not physical danger but psychological discomfort. That discomfort is what drives you to escape, to check your phone, to watch one more video, to do literally anything other than face the project. So the problem isn't that you lack discipline. The problem is that the project is framed in a way that overwhelms your brain's threat detection system. Now here's where the one-sentence method comes in. The trick is not to fight your brain's resistance head-on, but to shrink the task until the resistance disappears. Instead of telling yourself, I have to write this entire report, or I have to clean the whole room, or I need to finish this huge presentation, you tell yourself, I will write just one sentence. That's it. Not a page, not a paragraph, not a chapter. One single sentence. At first, this sounds almost too simple, almost laughable. How can writing one sentence solve the problem of a giant project? But here's where psychology reveals its magic. By making the entry point so ridiculously small, you bypass the brain's fear response. One sentence is not threatening. It doesn't trigger the amygdala. And the moment you write it, something fascinating happens. Momentum. Think about how often you've told yourself you'll only check your phone for a minute, and then suddenly 20 minutes are gone. The same mechanism works in reverse when you apply it to productive tasks. The one sentence is the gateway. It lowers the barrier of entry, and once you've crossed it, your brain naturally wants to keep going. Suddenly, writing another sentence doesn't feel so hard. Then, a paragraph. Then maybe half a page. Before you know it, you've started. And starting is the hardest part. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you've been putting off writing a 20-page report for work. The very thought makes your stomach knot. Instead of saying, I need to write the report, you say, I'll just write one sentence. Maybe you jot down, this report analyzes the current market trends in our industry. That's it. The project has begun. You've shifted from 0 to 1. And that single act changes everything, because now you're no longer the person avoiding the project. You're the person in motion. Research in behavioral science calls this the activation energy principle. Just like a chemical reaction requires a small spark to begin, your productivity requires a minimal entry point. Writing one sentence is the spark that ignites the chain reaction. But here's the deeper layer. The one-sentence method isn't only about words. It's about reframing any large project into its smallest actionable unit. If you want to start exercising, don't commit to running 5 kilometers. Commit to putting on your shoes. If you want to start meditating, don't promise yourself 20 minutes of silence. Promise yourself one deep breath. If you want to organize your house, don't swear you'll clean the entire room. Promise yourself to pick up just one item. The logic is the same. Reduce the starting point to such a tiny action that it slips past resistance. And every time you'll find that once you begin, the weight of the task melts away. Now, some of you might be thinking, but what if I really do just one sentence and stop? What if I put on my shoes and then take them off without running? That's the beauty of the method. It still counts, because progress is not about intensity, it's about consistency. If all you manage today is one sentence, that's infinitely better than 0. You've maintained the habit of starting. You've trained your brain to see big tasks not as threats, but as something approachable. And over time, that rewires your identity. You become someone who doesn't avoid projects, but always finds a way to begin. This is where identity-based habits come in, a concept from psychology that says real change happens when you shift your self-image. Every time you write one sentence, you're casting a vote for the identity of a writer. Every time you pick up one item, you're casting a vote for the identity of an organized person. The power is not in the one sentence itself, but in the repeated signal it sends to your brain. This is who I am. And here's the twist. Because the method is so easy, you remove the risk of failure. Traditional productivity systems often collapse because they demand too much too soon. The one-sentence method is fail-proof. You can always do it, no matter how tired, stressed, or busy you are. And because you can always do it, you build an unbreakable streak of small wins. Over time, those small wins compound into massive results. Let's make this practical. I want you to imagine the biggest project you're avoiding right now. Maybe it's studying for an exam. Maybe it's launching your own business. Maybe it's simply sorting through your email inbox. Take a deep breath, picture that task, and now ask yourself, what is the one-sentence version of this? If it's studying, maybe the sentence is writing down one definition. If it's launching a business, maybe it's typing one idea for your website. If it's emails, maybe it's replying with just one line to one person. That's all it takes. This shift from giant to microscopic is where procrastination loses its grip. And what makes this method even more powerful is how it aligns with the way your brain processes reward. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation, is released not when you finish the entire project, but when you make progress. Writing one sentence gives you that dopamine hit. It's like pressing start on a game. Suddenly you're rewarded and your brain wants more. The momentum builds on itself. Think of it like pushing a heavy car. At first, the resistance feels enormous, almost impossible to budge. But if you lean in and move it even an inch, the second inch is easier. Then the third. Soon the car is rolling, and what felt impossible becomes almost effortless. That's the one-sentence method in action. It doesn't remove the weight of the project, but it breaks inertia. And once inertia is broken, momentum takes over. There's another hidden strength in this method that goes beyond productivity. It teaches you to negotiate with your brain instead of fighting it. Too often we treat ourselves like enemies, demanding discipline, blaming ourselves for procrastination, forcing ourselves into rigid systems. But the one-sentence method is gentle. It works with your psychology, not against it. It acknowledges that fear, avoidance, and resistance are natural, and instead of trying to bulldoze them, it slips around them with elegance. You're not crushing procrastination with brute force. You're dissolving it with strategy. That's why it feels so liberating. And once you understand that you can always make progress through something as small as one sentence, you carry that power into every area of life. Think about creative projects. Authors who have written bestsellers often confess they never sat down to write a book. They sat down to write a sentence, then another. Over time, those sentences stacked into chapters, and chapters stacked into books. The same principle is true in business. Startups don't emerge fully formed. They begin with one line on a notepad, one email to a potential partner, one sentence describing the core idea. Even relationships can change this way. If you've been meaning to reconnect with someone but feel awkward or overwhelmed, the one-sentence method can be applied there too. Send them a single line. "I was just thinking about you today." That's enough to open the door. You see, the one-sentence method isn't just a productivity hack. It's a philosophy of life. It's about learning to start small without shame, and trusting that starting small is the seed from which big outcomes grow. And science fully supports this. Studies in behavioral psychology show that habits built on tiny actions are the most resilient. They bypass the perfectionism trap, they minimize failure, and they accumulate. James Clear calls it the power of atomic habits. BJ Fogg calls it tiny habits. But the essence is the same. Shrink the action until it's too small to fail. And a sentence is the perfect unit. Tiny enough to start, yet meaningful enough to grow. Now, let me give you a framework you can carry with you. Think of the one-sentence method as a three-step loop. Step 1. Shrink the task until it fits into one sentence. This is where you remove all the noise and boil the action down to its simplest expression. Step 2. Execute the sentence immediately. No overthinking, no delay, just do the micro-action. Step 3. Decide freely whether to continue or stop. If you stop, you've still won because you've beaten inertia. If you continue, you ride the wave of momentum. This loop works because it's self-contained. You don't need motivation, you don't need a perfect plan, you don't need hours of time. You only need the willingness to write one line. And every time you complete the loop, you reinforce the identity of being someone who starts. Over time, starting becomes your default state. And once you master the art of starting, finishing takes care of itself. Let me share a story. There was a student who always dreamed of writing a thesis but felt paralyzed by its scale. The thought of producing hundreds of pages filled him with dread. His advisor gave him one instruction: each day, write one sentence. At first, he thought it was ridiculous, but he obeyed. One day, he wrote just a single line. The next day, another. Some days, it was truly just one line, but often he found himself writing more. A few months later, he had a complete first draft. What once felt impossible had become inevitable, all because he lowered the barrier of entry. That's the magic available to you too. Picture the project you've been avoiding: the book, the business plan, the fitness journey, the personal transformation. Instead of staring at the peak of the mountain, look at the ground in front of you and take one step. Write one sentence. That's all it takes to move from 0 to 1. And the difference between 0 and 1 is infinite. Between 1 and 100, that's just effort. But between nothing and something, that's identity, that's transformation. And now let's anchor this into your daily life. Tonight, before you go to bed, choose one project that's been haunting you. Promise yourself tomorrow you will give it one sentence. Just one. And when tomorrow comes, do it. Feel how easy it is. Feel how the resistance shrinks. Feel how momentum begins to form. And then decide, do you want to stop or do you want to keep going? Both are victories because you've broken the cycle of avoidance. You've shown your brain a new path. Imagine if you repeated this for 30 days, 30 sentences. That could be 30 pages of a book, 30 emails that build relationships, 30 small moves toward a new business. That's not just progress, that's transformation. And it starts not with a grand plan or a burst of willpower, but with one gentle, undeniable action, a single sentence. So here's my challenge to you. Don't wait for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, the perfect block of time. Those moments rarely come. Instead, choose one project you've been putting off, open a blank page, and write one sentence. That's it. When you do, you'll feel something shift inside you. You'll realize that the mountain isn't immovable, that progress is always possible, and that you already have the key. The one-sentence method isn't about doing more. It's about discovering how little you actually need to begin. And once you begin, everything else follows. So go ahead, write your one sentence today, and watch as one sentence turns into momentum, momentum turns into progress, and progress turns into the life you've been waiting to create.